if the film's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, Only Lovers Left Alive, and Let the Right One In were to have a three-way baby bat, I imagine we'd get something like this. It's a part coming of age story, part love story, part existential, romantic, deadpan French Canadian comedy story. It's 2023's humanist vampire seeking consensual, suicidal person.
You know, past few months, and I would venture to say past few years, I've been feeling really depressed and pessimistic about cinema as a whole. And part of me just accepts that's a matter of getting old and hating everything that is new and young. But there is something about the change in the movie watching experience and the availability of um, caring, thoughtful, and interesting cinema. This film right here gives me hope, at least, for the possibility of good filmmaking, interesting stories that one of my favorite aspects of filmmaking is the blending of genres. Humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person. It would be very easy to watch this film, hear a description, or even hear that title with the word vampire in it and expect a horror film. And I don't see this as a horror film. I don't see this as necessarily a vampire film, although vampirism plays a very large role in both plot and plot point. So, like, I'm not being dismissive, but for the most part, what it seems to me is a blending of genres. The vampire film with a coming of age story. And I think the care and the understanding and the desire to dig into that world is what really separates this film from what it could have been, at least what I think the studio that financed it would have wanted. Because I think that's a constant, whether it's American films, Asian films, South American films, European films, and in this case, a Canadian-French co-production or a Canadian film in the French language. I think the driving force of just about every film is the return on the investment, and I can't deny that the importance of that. But watching this movie, it made me feel at least hopeful that although I'm losing my movie watching cinematic theatrical experience, there are the possibilities that if you dig deep enough and if you sift through the shit, you're going to find diamonds. And this is not a great film. This is not going to go on the list, but at the very least, I was watching something that I thought was different, heartfelt, interesting, well done, and with a point of view that hadn't been explored before this. I really enjoyed this film. I watched it two times in a 2-day period, and I was kind of shocked at what the first time I watched it with the idea of what I was going to see. And the second time I watched it with a better understanding of what it was. And I think the film needed that, or at least for me, it needed that. So, I really had a good time with it. I really liked the performances by the lead actors, Sarah Montpetit and Felix Antoine Bernard, I believe his name is. This was not. It wasn't a horror film. and then it wasn't when I realized that it wasn't a true horror vampire film, I was expecting the laughs, especially in the first 10 minutes when the young girl who centers and who centers this story, who grounds this story. It's a celebration of her birthday, and the way that plays out, it went in a different direction for me. And I gotta say, I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised in the chances that this film took and the payoff. I had a good time. So, as usual, what the fuck is your relationship to this film? How did you find this film? Was this just a matter of Googling vampire films and this shit came up in your feed? Or, because I don't know how you stumble across this without specifically looking for something to talk about over the next couple of months.
I mean, there is a well, Picasso said, "I don't seek, I find."
Yeah, you could do that.
And I don't Google, but I do use the internet. It was one of these things that it's like, which just makes it that much cooler, is that I stumbled upon it through just, yeah, I mean, not necessarily saying vampire films. It wasn't like, hey, ChatGPT, I have a podcast.
Yeah.
My friend and I, what can we talk? You know what I mean? It wasn't like that direct. So it was kind of like going over what we've done. Halloween is Halloween is hard because there's so much shit out there, but it's like when you've done all of not all, and then so no, not all, but when we've done the majority of like the shit that can come to mind when you think of like the big bad Halloween movies, horror movies.
Well, that's the thing. When you've done the big names, when you've done the classics, when you've done the ones that have established themselves and really stand out, now you're left with the shit that's out there, which is the shit that is out there. Yeah.
And sometimes the shit that's out there is also fun. And but then it's like, okay, like we want to do a mix. We want to have this like variety pack of stuff. That's going to go over a 2-month period, but still, at this point, I've come to terms with the fact that Halloween will never feel Halloweeny enough for me. Because I will always want more. And so it's like, okay, 1 month of horror films is not enough. We need 2. All right. And it's kind of like, okay, if you want the perfect grab bag of stuff, you want to have a nice variety. And in that is also like, well, let me keep just kind of wandering this labyrinth of like stuff. And then sometimes you just turn a corner and bam, you're into something different. And I had never seen this movie. So I was
but had you ever heard of it? Did somebody tell you about it?
No, I had never heard of it. I'd never seen it. I didn't know anything about it.
Because that's how usually it works, where cinema is filtered down to you. Somebody tells you, "Oh, I saw this film," and you have those friends. As elitist as it is to say, but we're talking about movies, and I'm a movie elitist cunt. I readily accept that.
What this is.
Yeah, that's exactly where it's like people have. I have people who tell me, "Oh, you need to check this out," and I'm like, "No, I can already tell by you and what you're recommending that this is going to be garbage, and I have no interest in diving into that." But then you have people that you trust. You have people who will tell you, "This is fucked up.
Cuts,
this is crazy."
Other film cuts.
Yeah.
Other cinematic cuts.
Yeah. But then you also know people that will pass on a title to you in a way where they're telling you, this is fucked up, but watch it with when I recommend Bad Lieutenant or nil by mouth or irreversible, or what's the Ray Winstone where he rapes his daughter? The war zone?
The war zone.
Yeah. You have to have a solid friendship.
You don't even need the title. You just need that question.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a movie. It's about Ray Winstone who rapes his daughter.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
You want to see it?
Yeah.
You should see it. You know what I mean? Like, no.
Yeah. You got to have a friendship, and you have to understand each other in such a way where you understand that the person that you're talking to appreciates the artistry of cinema. And if that doesn't exist in the relationship, then it's a different kind of friendship. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, that could be a valuable friendship, but that's not going to be the kind of friendship that's going to connect you in that aspect of the thing that you truly love, which is this. So
yeah.
So it's like I was half expecting that somebody that you knew told you about this film, or it somehow got filtered out to you. But see, it's like with A Girl Walks Home Alone, I had heard about that film through online chats and people reviewing one film and referencing that film, or talking about it from the what do you call it, the movie festival circuit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was aware of that film. This comes out of complete nowhere. This is almost like the movie gods opened up the sky and then just dropped this into whatever streaming platform you pull this shit out of. But it's I don't know if it's for everybody, because I don't, and this is the elitist part coming out again. I don't know if the majority of people can separate what they expect to see based on a title that includes vampire with what they're gonna with what they're gonna watch, which is a more I think uh, honest and insightful take on coming of age than anything John Hughes would have ever. And I mentioned John Hughes because that seems to be the fucking go-to for my generation of people who believe, especially white people from my generation who believe John Hughes was the voice of a generation. I always thought he was shit, but it is what it is. But
I
in
mean,
that regard,
for sure, he's at least for sure he's at least one part of that equation. I think for Gen X, and now this is going to go into another direction, but I think John Hughes is that first like Gen X voice. I think there were others too. I think Linkletter is an interesting tag on to that in a way that where he was able to describe and depict the 90s, but also the 70s.
Yeah.
In the 90s. And whereas Hughes was like very directly in for the elder Gen Xers or whatever. I think I can't think of the name right now, but the guy who did the Teenage Apocalypse trilogy,
Iraqi.
I think Iraqi is definitely, I would put him in there with I mean, obviously he's not. Look, John Hughes is like the pop cultural billboard one. Iraqi is like, that's not for everyone. That Iraqi, I think, is more along these lines in terms of kind of like not for everyone, by any means. It just off the top, it's like that's already like that's gay cinema.
Well, I can't even speak to that because I own the Iraqi trilogy, the Doom trilogy that Criterion put out. I just haven't had time to watch it yet.
Teenage Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Doom generation is my favorite of those films. But see, even I marginalize it when I talk about it because I mean, he is coming from the place of like gay cinema, and that's why for the Doom generation, he puts, I think in the beginning it says like a heterosexual film by Greg Araki.
Okay, I'd have to see it to comment on that. And
It's
Araki's
fucked up.
gay, or is Araki gay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that film has like bisexuality in it, but it's just and this is the film that I changed my mind. I was like, when we were talking about films that describe the decade, we were like Natural Born Killers, totally like, yes, I'm bored with that. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put the Doom generation because Heidi Fleiss comes out.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna put this in above, you know. And so for sure, I mean, when you think about voices of generation from the perspective of cinema, I mean, when you depict when you depict teens, there's that. Some people could probably argue that early Tarantino was like the director of the generation. Again, I don't think it's one person. I think he was one manifestation of that. But on the other side, like, so is the whole group that fucking came out with him. Like, so that I think it's not that simple. For this film, humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person. Already, it's a long ass title, which I love. It's written like a one ad, like a personal ad.
Yeah. Which really doesn't exist anymore, but
right, that's right. I don't know what that does to someone when they see that. I don't know what people's point of reference is anymore because I don't. I've lost. You and I don't have that same. We don't have the perspective in terms of access to a different generation in that sense. I saw a trailer for this movie about these people who are going to join this, or it wasn't a trailer. It wasn't even a trailer. It was like a clip, and it's about these people who are like joining this this like religious group, this like quote cult group, and the leader is this woman who's supposed to be from the future.
Okay.
And they're asking her like, well, what happens? They're asking her like to basically like prove that she's from the future, by asking what ends up happening in the immediate future. Like if she's born in, or if she's from 2030 or not 30, let's say she's from 2035.
Yeah.
What happens in 2029 or something like that, right? Or let's say she's from 2050, however it works. And then she's like, okay, when were you born? And he's like 79. And she's like, okay, so what happened in the year, like in April of 85 or something like that, right? And then the clip ended, but I was just kind of like, oh, she is from the future because she has no fucking connection to the past at all. Like, you maybe you can't like say what happened in April of 85 unless you're like a Rain Man type, which sometimes my wife accuses me of being. But you could still say that, like, okay, maybe I couldn't tell you April of 85, like on the dot, like on this date, but you can say, well, this is what was happening, like in general. This is the Reagan era. This was this, because I feel like we knew about those things. I don't know if we're the last generation or maybe the elder millennials are the last to be like, oh yeah, there's a sense of like history and there was a time before us. And we were even like shown that on TV pretty regularly. Things come up, anniversaries were talked about. in '94, people were they were talking about Woodstock. As a matter of fact, there was a Woodstock, a new one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whereas now these, like, a subsequent generation, like the Gen Z, they don't know, and Gen Alpha, forget it. Who knows what the fuck they're gonna know or not know? They're not even gonna know what's real because they're matrixed out. Because what is the Matrix? This movie from so long ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're talking about John Hughes, this coming of age thing. This resonated with me just even from a Gen X perspective. This idea, this kind of like, it had an element. Now that I think about it, I'm thinking there's even like a certain kind of, and forget even just because she has dark hair and bangs, like from a Tim Burton kind of element to it in terms of the outsider story aspect, in terms of the introverted nature of it, and that it can be both, that it can contain both elements of horror but also elements of like being cute, and there's something childlike and innocent about it, but at the same time it's like dressed in the elements of horror. And I thought that was cool. It was refreshing for me because it was in this weird way kind of like wholesome, because it's not like a horrible story, but there's also an element when it comes now to horror where it's like, I don't necessarily need to be scared all the time for horror. I just want to sit in the dark in that vibe. And that also means, yeah, it doesn't have to be a great film. It can be fucking Julian Sands in The Warlock, which is not a great film. But it's just, there's a nostalgia factor, there's just a vibe factor to it. And this, I got the vibe. And so I'm glad that I stumbled into this movie. Literally turned a corner. And there's a couple other films that I like ran into like this that we may not discuss this year, but they're in the books. So it also gives me hope that there's something else coming down the line that we don't know about yet. We'll see.
I think there's a tendency to fear the future because of the loss of what you know, what you feel comfortable with, and I definitely have a feeling of. I grew up in a time where you still had a handful of movie palaces. The Cine Capri in Phoenix, which was like, I don't know, it must have sat about 1,000 people. I remember making, when I moved to Los Angeles, I made a pilgrimage to Grauman's Chinese Theater before they redid it. I saw a handful of movies there. I remember when the Cinerama Dome reopened and the excitement of seeing movies there. And it was always with this understanding of what had come before. So you see those pictures of the grand movie palaces, whether they be in Chicago or New York or throughout the country.
LA on Broadway.
LA on Broadway, yeah, where they've all turned into basically Salvadoran churches. Good times with that.
I mean, so now one is an Apple store.
Oh, is it? God,
yeah.
Thank God I left. But that's the cut. One was an Urban Outfitter too. You know, I mean, I remember seeing. The Wild Bunch at the $1 Million Theater. I remember seeing Yojimbo there. I think I saw Yojimbo or Redbeard there. So it was seen.
Blade Runner shit, you know? It comes out.
Yeah. And you see all this, and it takes you back to a time. But today's audiences have no idea of that. They don't know what that is. They don't have an appreciation for that because they don't even know what it was. So when I get to see something like this is like a we talked about some movie having a 70s vibe to it. I can't remember I can't remember what movie we were talking about where it was like, yeah, that movie could have been written and directed in the 70s. Oh no, my friend a friend of mine a friend of mine, we were talking about movies and we were talking about a movie that he was writing, and the attitude of the movie and the vibe of the movie was definitely a 1970s kind of loser, anti-hero storyline where that was a lot more palatable in the 1970s. This seems like a movie that at least has a 1970s patience with it, because I did find myself watching it the first time thinking, when is this going to start? When is something going to actually happen? And I think it was about 15, 20 minutes where I realized, oh, this is more of a character study. This is understanding these people. This is not so much, this is not plot driven. This is character driven. And I don't think you see that too often in horror films. Horror films are, for the most part, blood and guts, and let's see how much violence we can pack into a scene. That's not what this film is. This is a more thoughtful, and I think it's a film that takes a distant view of coming of age, because it puts it in a weird. There's a distance in it because of the scenario,
Yes,
vampires.
I was working.
You
Yeah.
know, yeah. So it's like you're separate from that, but it gives it a weird kind of perspective where it makes it. There's something about the universality of it where you start to
Hmm.
understand that this is something that is not. Number one, it's foreign. It's in a foreign language. It's in French. Number two, it's about a generation that I don't relate to, but there there are people within it that would have been in the same stories that I would have embraced when I was young. It's an outsider story. That might be a
Yeah.
good idea to come that we might want to explore later on. Outsider stories. Um, the person who is doing everything that they can to retain their own personal identity. So what I think is great about this film is um, and admittedly it's not for everybody, but I think if you're open to storytelling, and if you're open to really good acting and a slow narrative, you'll have a good time with this film. What it is a young woman who is growing up in a family of vampires, and she has no desire. It's almost like she's a vegan. She's a vampire vegan. She doesn't want to kill. She doesn't have that killing instinct, um, and it's a struggle with her parents because her parents want her to be like the rest of them, and it's a matter of they just want her to be safe. They want the best for her in a weird way, because the father in particular is a great movie father for the little bit of time that we see him, and the mother is a little bit harsher. But when you look at the family, it's like they care about their daughter, and they know that they it's hilarious because she's living in a family. Her parents must be in their 200s. She's in her 60s. I thought that was fucking great. But you see her as a little girl.
Well, she's
On
not a little girl. She's like a high school chick.
no. When she's a little girl in the beginning.
Mm.
So
In the beginning for her birthday.
for her birthday, and they bring her a clown, and you're watching this,
Yeah.
and you're like, what the fuck? And you know it's a vampire movie, but you're watching it, and you're like, wait a minute, what? And then that's when I thought it was going to be a comedy. I thought it was going to. I didn't think. I think it was going to be more tongue in cheek, and it was going to have a bigger, grander sense of humor, and it didn't have that.
Which is dry. It's very dry.
It's very dry. It's very dry. There are comic moments in it, but for the most part, this is not a knee slapper. This is not something that you watch and you're like, oh my god, I'm pissing myself. It's so funny, but it's very honest to the story. So the performance is the way it's written is very honest to the reality of I think real life, where you have parents that want their daughter to mature. They
Hmm.
want her to grow up. They want her to start hunting,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit more. It's a lot heavier because this involves killing. And the young girl doesn't want that. She doesn't want to be that. She's afraid of that side of herself. But she drinks blood that her parents are providing. And there's a. I find it hard to imagine that this director, Ariane Louis, uh, sorry, I guess
Size.
Size. I'd be really surprised if this director had never seen Only Lovers Left Alive. And I watched it with. I almost saw it like a prequel to that film.
Like this is them young.
Yeah, this is them young. This is them, and I know it's not. I know it's not in any way, but
Right.
there's that connection. It's like a spiritual cousin to that film, which I think is my favorite vampire film of all time. It's my favorite Jarmusch film. It's my favorite vampire film. Um, and this has elements of that because it makes the character, where that film was also a human outsider type film that was set in a vampire scenario. That's the same thing here, because these kids, this young girl, doesn't fit in. She loves her family, but she's not going to bend to their will. And she's basically thrown out of her house, or told, in a very gentle way, because the mother will not hunt for her. The mother says, "I can't hunt for three people. I can, And the father is
Well,
like, we're it's one more person. What's the big deal? It's very honest to family.
well, it's that's the it stacks metaphors. So I mean, it is a love story
Yeah.
about it's reluctant female vampire meets suicidal boy, and that's in the title.
Yeah.
I mean, that there's an aspect to that in the title. It's a coming of age story because the girl's fangs they only come out for him.
Hmm.
They don't come out. So she's like this like late bloomer, right?
Yeah.
But it's an outsider story, like you're saying, because it's about choice, it's about being who you are, and the dangers of denying who you are.
Yes.
And but then there's the work metaphor, because the mom, like as you're describing, this is the source of the social conflict in the film, is that vampires have to exist in this world, and the mom is the primary breadwinner or the blood winner. Um, she hunts, she kills, she brings home not the bacon, but she brings home the blood.
Hmm.
And she wants everyone to help out and pitch in. And the dad, she's like all pissed off because that's that era of her life, and after a hard night's work, of killing,
Could take a lot
and
out of you.
yeah,
Let's be
right,
honest.
uh, and she's been doing it for centuries now,
Hmm.
and the dad is like, I hunt, and she's like, oh, you hunted the other day, okay, like wow,
Yeah. You made the
and
bed. You took the trash out. Calm down. No.
and he really supports his daughter,
Yeah.
and his daughter's a musician.
Hmm.
Um, but you're not getting blood from your music, like y we can see the metaphor here. It's very clear. But it's funny, I really identify with this movie in the sense that it's like super dry,
Hmm.
and super introverted. I'm more introverted than I come off, um, because I'm because I pretend. Um, no,
Hmm.
I get these people.
Yeah.
Um, so
It's fair.
the girl drinks blood, like you're describing,
Hmm.
but it's provided for her.
It's weird. And they make her
She's
childish in a weird way. Like, She's like drinking Capri Suns. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought of it more of like there is that element, yeah, with the straw, the
Yeah,
blood bag,
yeah.
but there is an element also of kind of like the kid goes, not the adolescent goes
Hmm.
to the fridge, sees what's in it, grabs
Uh-huh.
whatever, sits on the couch, and is like when you drink the soda, and then like when you get to the bottom and you hear that sound of like,
Yeah.
yeah, and the mom is like, you're just fucking like, you're a parasite. You're just
Yeah.
fucking. I mean, obviously they're all parasites, but well, they're not parasites, but they're parasitic.
Hmm.
Um, but to her, feeding is like a necessary evil, and she doesn't want to kill. So ultimately, if it comes down to it, she'd rather starve, um, because it doesn't align with her, and that even shows in terms of her biology. Because the vampire like doctors are like her fangs aren't coming out. Um, so the family, as you described, they force her out. They want her to be independent. They're like, go live with your cousin, and you're gonna have to fucking go out there and like make a killing, you know?
Yeah.
And she meets a boy who's bullied, who just doesn't want to live, but he hasn't made the commitment yet to be able to kill himself. Um, she needs to feed. He wants to die. Boom, it's a match.
Hmm.
So the coming of age work metaphor meets the girl meets boy metaphor, or girl meets boy plot line, or whatever. Um, and then stack that with this existential condition. Um, in the beginning, I described like, because to me, yeah, it's this kind of mixture of um, Let the Right One In is about a girl vampire and the human boy who becomes her like Renfield, basically.
Yeah.
And so it's this like cross species, so to speak, relationship. Um, there's an element to that in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, except it's more love story. And there is an element of her doing the Lord's work, and
Yeah.
providing justice
Yeah.
as a vampire. And there's a feminist element to that. Um, plus Only Lovers Left Alive, which is just kind of like vampires just hanging out,
Hmm.
also like being somewhat bored with their existence as vampires, which does owe a debt to Anne Rice. So there's a lot of the tradition there. There's a lot of inter like vampire cinematic tradition stuff, drawing from other places. But if you're born a vampire, you have to feed. If you're born a human, you have to live. You're alive. And what happens if you don't want to? This goes to Sartre's maxim that says that existence precedes essence. Number one, you're born. Then, after you realize that you're like, oh fuck, um, there's we act as humans. The kid is hungry. The kid's like, give me. The kid learns to eat by himself or herself, pushes the food away. I don't want that right now. I don't want that, whatever. But then at some point, you realize in your mind, I exist. Beyond just knowing that you exist because you're functioning in the world as a little baby with a temperament and with needs and whatever. There's a point where you're like, fuck, like I in my mind know that I exist and I can think about the fact that I exist. What what is my life? That's when you're trying to figure out what the fuck value you're alive. What are you gonna do about it? So on the one hand, you have society and culture, nature, nurture, all this shit says, well, this is what you do. You you're a vampire. You have to go out and you have to do this. You have to go out and you have to do that. And then you avoid this and you do that. And as an individual, if that doesn't align with that, um, what do you do? If your individuality, your personality, your personal ethics, um, your gender identity, if those things don't align with fucking like where you're at, like what do you do? And because if you don't, if you just go with what you're being told, then you start to believe that you're living a lie. You feel that you're not being who you are. You're being who other people tell you who to be. And as adolescents, that's like there's the terrible twos when kids start to like realize like, I don't want this. I want that. I want this. I want that. I don't want that. I don't want, and they're actualizing at in their capability at that time. Then teenagerhood, here we go. Fuck my parents. I don't want to be like them. Um, they listen to gangster rap, so I'm gonna become a born again Christian because fuck that,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Um, and this is that age for these teens. They're even if they're seniors in high school, whatever it is, if they're on the cusp of adulthood, they're in between. It's fucking Alice Cooper. What is it? Lines form to my left and right. Lines form on my face and hands. I'm a boy and I'm a man. I'm 18 and I don't know what I want. Except like you kind of do know what you want,
Yeah.
or you know what you don't want. And so they're at that crux. And you could say, well, do you ever feel that these characters are in danger? Is there a sense of danger? And is James Woods going to go to their house and fucking pull them out and drag them into the sun with one of the Baldwin brothers? No. Um, it's not garlic. It's not necessarily a stake through the heart. It's not even so much the sun that you're like worried about. It's the danger of denial, of denying from the vampire cultural perspective. It's denial of what you are. You're a vampire. You have to feed. You have to kill.
Sure.
If you don't, you will die. Get a job. Be a productive vampire.
Well, that's where empathy comes in, and empathy is incredibly important in the viewing experience. So it's like you empathize with Sasha, you empathize with Paul in the same way that you empathize with Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton in Only Lovers Left Alive. It's like, yeah, in order for them to live, somebody has to die, but in order for me to live, a cow must die. So that it's this is the way of the world. This is what we exist in, and I know that those two don't equate in the same way. But if you have a degree of empathy, you understand the need to survive. What's really powerful in this film, and I think it really makes it a story worth telling and a story worth watching, is that the Sasha character, they humanize the vampire to a degree. They make the family um, I guess in a weird way, 50s TV nuclear family, mother, father, breadwinner, artist, all of that extended family, and you see a community within that family, so you know it must exist in a bigger picture as well. But the defiance of natural expectations or the order or whatever you want to call it makes her an incredibly interesting character and something that you want to follow. So it's great that you bring up James Woods or a Van Helsing or something like that. That's an element of the traditional vampire film, and maybe that exists within the world that is here. We're not privy to it because it doesn't suit the story, but what you're watching is what you're watching is a vampire story with humanity in it,
Hmm.
because vampires are traditionally evil characters. But if you really
And
look,
and
mhm,
and a sense of humanism, a sense of ethics,
yeah,
and value to humanity.
yeah. But this goes back to what we were hoping last week's film, Blackula, would have been, because Prince Mamu Mamualba, what was
Moralde.
yeah, he was he's an African prince that is fighting for his people, and then
Count
is,
Brown.
yeah, Count Brown, wandering downtown for the love of a woman. Um, you didn't see that in the Bela Lugosi films. You didn't see that in Christopher Lee or Chris Sarandon. Coppola attacks it with Bram Stoker's Dracula, and that takes the vampire character from villain to what do you call it? Where you have an emotional connection with these characters. Love is a
Yeah, I mean,
very,
there's relatability.
yeah. There's a
Um,
relatability.
well,
There's
and
an
I did
understanding.
that with the book,
Hmm.
um, where it's not just this killing machine. Or even a seductive killing machine. It's now like, fuck, like this sucks.
Living forever
You know
is
what I
not the
mean? Like,
greatest thing.
like,
I remember a Twilight Zone episode where it's centered around a character who could not die. I got to go back into that, and That's one of the central problems of vampires. They cannot die, and
well, they can, but
you know what I mean, though, right?
yeah.
They can't die a natural death. They have to be killed.
Even though and in this film they actually can, but because it's like a species, but you can become part of it. But it plays with the mythology in an interesting way. But as they all do.
Well,
Um,
the thing is that those vampire movies never address the idea of um, starving, starving to death. Now, Jim Jarmusch in Only Lovers Left Alive, he plays with the idea of tainted blood, which I thought is a great addition and doesn't fuck with the mythology of the vampire. It takes the reality of the world that we live in and adds the AIDS element to a story where it's like, yeah, that would play out in it. That's one of the things that I love about that movie.
right. I mean,
So
there's
it
the
modernizes
hunger.
things.
The hunger has David Bowie as he's aging.
Hmm.
Um, so that's an interesting element of it too. And they are also a species, and that's the Whitley Strieber and Tony Scott made the film in the '80s. There's also Abel Ferrara does the
Hmm.
addiction, where
Yeah.
the metaphor is it's a drug addiction, vampirism, and Christopher Walken uses philosophy and like self discipline as a way of like breaking himself of that habit. But how do you exist? Um, Louis in Interview with the Vampire is like, well, I'm not going to kill humans. I'm going to eat rats. I'm going to kill rats. Um, and and there is that class element where Tom Cruise's Lestat is like, really, Louis? Like, you're gonna fucking eat rats? Like, that's not what we do. Like, that's his version of fucking telling Jules you're gonna be a bum,
Yeah.
because he's like, no, like we are the aristocracy as vampires. Like, we're at a higher level. These people are cattle to us. And then you throw in a fucking the fact that like Louis actually owns a plantation, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so there's all this fucking like and we talked about this with Blackula last week. The idea of the plague is like embedded in the Dracula story. So there is this element of disease. There is this element of like dread. There is this element of romance and love. There is this element of like nobility. And I don't mean as a character trait. I mean as like a social rank.
Yeah, but I always viewed the plague in those stories, especially with Herzog's version, as uh, Nosferatu was an element of the plague. So,
Absolutely,
and I'm
but
talking about
beyond
the
that,
difference between disease coming into the life of vampires as something that could kill them. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a
I
lot to
mean,
fucking play with.
it depends on how it's being used.
Hmm.
But the idea is that like that door has been open since the beginning. Um, and whether it's like, yeah, Anne Rice is like, okay, don't drink dead blood because then the vampires will die. Or is it the idea of like, well, no, yes, Count Dracula is the plague arriving. Or is it like, well, these Eastern European, who knows who are arriving? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, that's buried underneath it that's saying like, it's actually about an element of like xenophobia.
sure.
Um, so it's like, it's in the same way that it's like, well, Frankenstein is you can say, well, oh, this colony over here, these people think they're human now. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
so there's that's the beauty of the genre is that it can be turned into social commentary. It can be flipped. It can be you can do all this different shit. It can be used for anyone's fucking propagandistic fucking whatever. I mean, like MAGA could say, well, the Democrats are just vampires feeding on our culture, blah 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 blah. Fucking Gavin Newsom could be like, fuck you, Republican states are vampires feeding off of the money that California gives to them. You know what I mean? Like it can be used
Hmm.
any kind of way. You can use it any way you want. And the only key is that is it compelling? Um, and this is compelling because, as you said, it is universal. It's and it works in that sense. I talked about from the vampire culture perspective. It's like, well, no, you have to kill. But from her perspective, from the humanist vampire perspective, it's like the danger isn't in the denial of what I am. The danger is in the denial of who I am. I'm not a thing. I'm a person.
Yeah.
And and as you say, like the this gives her humanity. I mean, they all have humanity in the sense that they're this kind of like Adam's family, Frank, the Munsters, this little community that like comes together when they need to. But the humanistic optimism of the film isn't that it's not that it becomes this capitalistic they start a vampire business and are successful and they pull themselves up by their vampire bootstraps or whatever. It's that they figure out a way to hack
Hmm.
the system. So for her, she's going to choose who she feeds on. For him, he's going to sacrifice himself for her. Um, and in that sense, it's kind of like it's cheesy, but it's like for him, it's like if he finds something that he can live for, then I mean, something that he'll die for, then he can find something that he'll live for.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, he explains it
and
at a certain point. This is the only thing I've ever wanted. He says it,
yeah,
and it's like I was like, shit. That's a real interesting look at suicide because that's what he is. I mean, he's not being killed. He's sacrificing himself, which is suicide, which is something that is looked down upon in our society. But at the same time, I mean, this film I could see this film pissing off a lot of people if,
Even the title.
yeah, yeah, with people without the sense to understand what it's saying about society, because it goes into euthanasia, um, and it's juggling a lot of important balls while finding. I don't know if I would call it so much an entertaining story, but at least an insightful and enlightening story. I mean, I think sometimes you need this kind of I wouldn't call it so much abstract, but like this strange story in order to properly reflect on the world that we live in.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, allegory goes all
Yeah,
the way back. I mean, you've
absolutely.
always done that, where you don't come at it necessarily directly, but you frame it in something else so that the person goes. Hopefully, they would say like, ah, okay,
Hmm.
you mean kind of like this.
Yeah,
You mean what you're saying is kind of like what I'm going
yeah.
through, and then the person gets a twinkle in his eye and says, "Yes, my child, this is
Hmm.
what I'm describing."
And that's always been the case with. That's always been most powerfully realized, I think, in horror and science fiction
Or fantasy.
or fantasy. But yeah, yeah. These are lessons that we need to learn. These are lessons that need to be embraced and understood on a different level. And I think this film does a beautiful job of that. I think it's I don't know if this is a first time filmmaker. I don't know if it's somebody who has
I think
worked in
she's
the
done
industry.
shorts.
Shorts. Well, I mean,
Yeah, I haven't seen them.
it's a great start, and I would love to see where the films go. I'd like to see where this person takes it, because there's I think there's a hell of a lot more maturity and storytelling skill in this film than I've seen in a lot of things. I can't tell you the last time. I mean, yeah, I can't tell you the last time that I was watching a new movie that was a new idea. And yeah, this is a vampire film, but it's a very new idea. It's a very unique take on the vampire genre that achieved it with such a level of sensitivity and insight. And I feel like I feel like I understood this young girl, who's 68 years old in vampire years, um, well, in human years, but 16 in vampire years, I would say. Um, and this young man that she, and it's never explicitly made to be a romance, but
But
you know,
but
but it
but
is, yeah,
yeah, of course, because
yeah.
I'm kind of like
But you
these
know, there's never a
fucking
moment where they
experts.
kiss. There's never that look
These
that
fucking dumb
where.
extroverts need everything to be like shown to them
But that's the
or said.
thing. That's where a weaker and more insecure filmmaker would have went with this. There would have been that
Yes,
moment where they would have looked into each other's eyes, and they would have started kissing, and then boom, she bites him. But
yeah,
it doesn't
of
do
course.
that.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I think
That's
that's a hell. And I can imagine if definitely if this was an American studio film, or if
American.
they remake this, that would be one of
Oh
the
god.
first notes that Columbia, Universal, or Paramount, or Warner Brothers would tell them. You got to have that moment.
They'll be like, first of all, can she be blonde?
Yeah,
Because like
yeah.
good genes and stuff. Um, and yeah, can they fucking kiss? And it's kind of like, do you not see that the way that they're not looking at each other? Um, it's not about what's being shown or said. It's about what's not being shown, and it's so fucking loud. And to me, that's what's so. It makes me like root for this couple.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's very rare that I fucking like. I never fucking root for fucking. I mean, the idea, and this also happens, I think, I've been in a relationship with the same person for a long time, and then it's almost a year ago that I've been married. Um, there is an element of there is a Bonnie and Clyde-ness that I think should happen when you get married, where it's like, fuck the world. It's me and you against the world.
Yeah.
Um, that I think that if everyone could have that, without criminality, without without that element, um, then and without like codependency or anything like that, then like yes. Um, and there is an element to that in this film where it's kind of like once he offers himself to her, basically, she's like, okay, but do you have a dying wish? And then that goes into this other level of like, what would you do? And that goes into those feel good movies about the person who is like, I haven't seen it, but like that Queen Latifah movie, I think it is, or movies like that where it's like,
Last
oh, you're gonna
Holiday, yeah.
die.
Mhm.
What do you do? And there's a psychologist, therapist. Like, I don't know if he's a psychiatrist. His name's Gabor Mate, and he talks about addiction, and he talks about authenticity and the power of authenticity. I mean, I think sometimes he does veer into like if like this can actually cause like diseases to go into remission and healing and stuff like that. But let's put that to the side and just talk about just strictly like the metaphor, like from just metaphorically how one can be healed by authenticity.
Yeah.
And like if you had a dying wish, if you thought that you were going to die, but you still had like time to and the psychological wherewithal to enjoy. If you came to terms with it enough that you're able to like you're not terrified and you're like if you have a week or something like that to do whatever the fuck you wanted because you know you're gonna die, what would you do? And I think most people are like not our current government administration that's like, oh yeah, I can do whatever I want because I already can. Let's kill everybody. Let's rape. Let's no, just the average person is going to be like, I quit my job. I tell my boss to fuck himself. Um, I would break up with my abusive or whatever partner, or I would with my marriage or whatever bullshit. I would stop paying these fucking stupid bills that whatever like abusive fucking predatory loan place. You get the idea. It would
Mm-hmm.
be all kinds of the sense of freedom, the sense of like kind of balancing the scales. Um, I would tell someone how I really feel. This kid, what does he do? He fucking hugs his mom. He, um, he right away he's like the bully. I need to set things right against this bully, and he bites him, which is obviously foreshadowing. And earlier he was already like seen as like this weirdo because he killed a bat. He swatted it, and then he did a mercy killing of this bat, which is also foreshadowing. Um, so they go through this whole thing of like wreaking havoc on his oppressors or whatever. And then, but her cousin is now like, you have to fucking kill this guy because you brought him to my house and you let him go and he's not dead. You need to kill him. So they are now in this us versus them level because society is out to get him now because he went against them. At his high school, the bully ends up getting killed because, and I'm spoilers alert for the whole fucking thing, but he bit the bully attacked him, she got pissed off because she got all mama bear vampire for her fucking lover and fucking ate him. So now what are they gonna do? So he's like, everyone's against you, everyone's against me. I need the, and he goes through this like decision tree chart, which I was like, oh fuck, like I feel so seen. Um, and he's like, I've looked at every fucking possible scenario that could happen, and you have to turn me. And she's like, no, and he's like, yes, you have to. I could be a really creative humanist vampire. And then that's when what you bring up when he's like, this is what I want. And then it's like, well, what if it doesn't work? Well, I'll be dead, and you ate.
I get what I want either way. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you get a version of, she's like, well, my fangs aren't going to come out. So she's having like a performance anxiety type of thing. And in that sense, like they're virgins. And he's like, not to brag, but like they come out whenever you think of me in danger. And so she's like, all right. So he lies back, awkward as fuck. He lies back, and she starts thinking. So she starts like breathing heavily because she's thinking about her cousin killing him. Then she mounts him, and she bites him, and there's a lot of moaning, and that's the version of like they're sexy. Then she's not sure if she killed him. What the fuck? She calls her family, and they do come and help her.
Reluctantly, but yeah, they do.
I mean, they're there.
Mm-hmm.
They're complaining about it, but they're there.
Yeah, they're there. Just like fucking family will do, if you're lucky.
That's right.
If you're lucky.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're lucky. Right. And then the happy ending, the happily undead ever after, is that in the hacking of the system, they figured out a way to make a living or a killing in a creative way that suits their way of being, and it isn't determined by culture, race, species, class. They provide basically like a euthanasia service because the kid's mom is like a nurse. The dude, his mom is like a nurse. So the girl, Sasha, plays piano. So they provide these concerts for terminally ill patients who are ready to die.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily that like these people are it may be like their last day anyway, because a lot of these people are like all morphined out. Like these people are terminally ill, and they turn their what could be their last day anyway into like this beautiful concert. They bring this woman something from her for something from her garden. The Sasha's playing piano, and then they just drain the blood. And so in the last shot, you just see him walking down the hall of the hospital, and like he's had like this vampire glow up basically. So now he looks like so-called like cooler.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't seem all awkward as fuck, and together they're like this like little teen power couple or whatever that have figured out a way to exist and still be authentic to themselves.
Yeah.
And unless you're a fucking some kind of authoritarian, like which they're out there, we know that. You look at something like this and you're like, how do you not want that for yourself and for other people? And if you see it in another person, how is it that like not being a fucking envious, jealous piece of shit, but to be like, fuck, like that's fucking cool. Like, how can I learn from that? How can I apply that to my life? What can I do to bring in some of that energy into my world and my world and the world of those around me, potentially. And that's why it's like you root for the couple, and then when they actually like succeed, and it is this happy ending, you're happy for them, and it's also, it sucks, but it's kind of like, it's because it's like you realize that the odds in reality are not that, because most people don't have that. Most people are basically already dead but alive in our fucking reality loops, and that's in a sense that's so much more fucking tragic than anything else. Is to live in a way that's completely unfulfilled, and even itself, like the idea of like fulfillment is also it comes from a place of privilege, because like at the most basic, the idea is like, oh, to feed, to be able to have your basic fucking lower level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs met, the most basic shit that obviously people in this country, in the US, don't have those needs met, as wealthy as our fucking country is. So imagine in some other fucking place that's been fucked over by all these wars and famine, genocide, all this other shit. Forget it. So the idea of like, not only that you can eat, but that you can fucking feel good about the way that you were able to afford the food to begin with, because that aligns with your fucking personal whatever, that's privilege. But that we're in this situation, it's like, how much more, if we're looking at it from that humanist perspective, if we are in this situation where we can afford, as we pay our fucking privileged fucking student loan debts and all whatever other bullshit, like those of us who have them, like how can we still try to align our values to our ways of like living, so that we do have a positive impact on those who cannot, or even if you're just fucking, if you're not a piece of shit because you're pissed off all the time, because at least while you work, while you make the money so you can eat, you don't fuck over somebody else's day because you're fucking a piece of shit, or you're like, I'm not a friendly person when it comes to like my work world. But if I were doing what I felt that I loved, I wouldn't be as fucking annoyed. And maybe that would ripple out to someone in a way that's like, cool. You know what I mean? Like, if the person who made this film hated making this film, we wouldn't have the same film.
No, you wouldn't. I think there's a
like,
genuine
we
love
do
here.
benefit from labors of love.
Yeah.
Huh?
I think there's a genuine love in the making of this film. I think there was the kernel of a story that really grew into something that was different and beautiful in its own way. And I'm glad I got a chance to see it. And I'm finding, as I watch more and more movies, that is a rare feeling. When I finished this film 2 nights ago, I really didn't know what I was thinking. I didn't know what to think. I was like, I hadn't seen anything like this in a long time. I'd never seen it. I'd actually never seen anything like this. But to have me have this weird kind of feeling of, wait a minute, what the fuck did I just watch? That doesn't happen too often any longer.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, this is like middle-aged person looking at like young people and being like, yeah, there is fucking hope. Like,
Yeah.
just in the sense of like seeing someone be into something, that just that
Yeah.
is like, you know what? I'm glad that fucking people are still into shit. I'm glad that people are still fucking like. I'm glad that there still is such a thing as subculture that you can somehow find outside of the deepest fucking trenches of the internet. Or, I'm glad that like if you see, and for like people in a relationship too, I think it's interesting to watch if you see like young people who fucking still outwardly seem like happy. It's just kind of like, look at these little fucking dumbasses, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
uh,
You
but
have
there's
no
something
idea what's
about it
coming.
that, like,
Yeah.
there's something about it that makes you smile because it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
fuck, like I remember that. I remember the that kind of, whether it's just like some puppy love thing or it's whatever, or it's a crush or whatever it is. Um, it There's something about it that is, that's a level of nostalgia where it's kind of like, mm,
Yeah.
that's cool. And in that sense, it does draw a line from what you're talking about of like, from this to Only Lovers Left Alive, where this is the beginning. Only Lovers Left Alive is fucking centuries in the making. Um, where it's like, I'm gonna fucking live on this continent for like 50 years just to like, I just need like alone time.
Mhm.
I'll be back. I'll see you in fucking like 25 years or whatever, or even if it's, well, however, 12 years or whatever it is. But then it's like, fuck, like I've missed you. And then they do the Dracula crossing oceans of time shit. Um, and, and then they reunite and they're just, they have this deep, deep level of love for one another that can only be developed with that amount of fucking time, that basically an immortal can have. Um, so it's interesting to see that, to see how you imagine that they will grow into that couple. Um, and in the Adams family sense, like they're not vampire, but like they will become like this kind of like Morticia Gomez fucking thing. And this couple, the actors are great, and they're everyone's great, but the two leads
Mhm.
are really good, and they're really good at like creating that chemistry. And they're really good at creating that introverted kind of like, I'm gonna stare at you, but then I'm gonna look away. I'm not gonna say anything, but I don't have to. Um, but I wonder, is the other person? Hmm. There's just so much there that I think is really captured, well, in like a sense of personal awkwardness, um, awkwardness amongst each other, but then like once they kind of like sit in it, there's so much that like is transmitted. Um, that moment where there's a scene where she puts on a record, that Emotion song,
Yeah.
and they're just standing there in front of it, but then like it's like her favorite song or whatever, the song that she would like die to. And so she starts like vibing with the song, and she's like moving her arms around, like undulating with the music. And he has like permission to kind of let go too. So he starts like bobbing his head. Um, and they have this moment. They look at each other. They look away. There are no American studios to murder that moment at that point. And then the song, at one point it says, "Emotions, give me a break." And she kind of like gets out of it and goes and sits down. And if um, if you're a certain type of introvert, that like speaks volumes, because it's like she's now too like overstimulated emotionally, and so she kind of she doesn't shut down, but she kind of like takes the volume down internally and turns and goes and sits because it was like too much and it was emotions, give me a break, like the song said. So then he goes and he sits next to her. So while he like matches her energy, but he still goes to her and sits next to her. And so I was like, there are very few moments I think in cinema where I personally am like, this fucking like this is really like down to the personality type. Where there are things that like I really understand the way that a character is written, that I can not only understand, but I feel like I really relate to it, and I can see it in action, and I'm like, oh, that's really fucking interesting. Um, very few times, I think maybe Amelie, I felt that from that character. There are certain things that that I'm like, oh, I fucking like I get it. I completely get that. Um, some moments in the Walter Mitty movie.
Really?
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, that character, there are certain moments. And then this couple. I'd have to think of others. But yeah, it's very interesting. It would be interesting. See, I don't know because I feel like since the world and our culture is like geared towards extroversion, I don't know if, and I think that's for the most part like taken for granted. So I don't see extroverts being like, yeah, like I fucking relate to that guy. And obviously not all extroverts are outgoing like that, but because that's not what it means. But I don't fucking see that. I just see kind of like it's mostly like, why is that person weird?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I get who you are, but you don't get who I am. You know.
Sure.
So it is interesting. My experience in that sense was like not necessarily personal, but there was something about it that there was a recognition of behaviors and of like kind of mechanisms that it was like, oh, I understand what that moment would be if I were in it because it matches like what I would do because it makes sense.
Sometimes there's just a connection with a story or a performance, and you're lucky when it's both of those things coming together at the same time to push this story through. And I think there's definitely, from what you're describing, elements of that with you, and there were elements of that with myself as well. And I just think that it's going to be interesting to go back to this movie in a couple of years because I'm not. This film is definitely going to go into the rotation, so it's going to be interesting in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years to figure out and to look back on it. The farther you get from that age to what it means to remember it. And I think there's a lot of emotion here. I think they're making some bold statements about what it is to be human, and it's couched in this vampire analogy, and I really love that. I really do feel like I saw it was one of the better movie watching experiences that I've had, and I'm thankful for having had it.
Yeah, so it's a good find and one of the few and far between interesting recent films.
Yeah.
So,
and you can say that interesting recent films. What is it? 2023. 2023.
Yeah.
Surprising.
buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. That's buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. This one goes to Mr. Burrows. Thank you for what you do. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being whoever the fuck you are and letting us be whoever the fuck we are. We don't do this to make a living, to make a killing. to make any of it. You want to give us some of your blood? We'll drink it. Goodbye.